Alright, welcome back. This is MDawg, and we are starting a new leveling series. I like to do this time of year. I don't know, I'd have to think about it. Maybe heading towards Christmas and winter, probably also heading towards summer. I suppose times when it seems like folks have vacation or time off from work or school makes sense to start one of these leveling series. Hopefully this will be helpful for someone, as I know any given day there are new people who are discovering this fishing simulator RF4, and because of how complex parts of the game can be, sometimes it's helpful to have a leveling buddy or several leveling buddies, and maybe this video series can be one of those for you. So we're going to play through the tutorial here, and then I'll try to just figure out kind of where we go from there. Maybe today we'll just focus on, or at least one of the things I'll try to remember to focus on is once we get out of the tutorial, what are some of the very first things that are worth spending your resources on so that you can start to experience some early success in fishing in this game. Obviously there's going to be a lot of nuance to that, but we'll try to talk through that a little bit. All right, let's start this tutorial. The leveling angler. Actually, really quick, as a first thing, let's see if we can find our chat channel, and if it'll load. This has been loading very slowly for me over the last several months. This one. So this is the chat channel I usually get in when I'm streaming, which obviously I'm not streaming right now because we're working on making these videos for YouTube. But still be fun to join our community so that I can see what's going on and what people are catching, and we can kind of talk about that as we go. And then if I need to, I can always cover up chat. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so we are being instructed on how to move here. Woo, coffee is good, but it is hot. Okay, approach the edge of the lake. Let's get through this tutorial. Wait for the bite. Man, such a smart, I think, smart move to create a specific tutorial water body so that everything can be very, very carefully pre-programmed. So we're waiting for the float to sink or go to the side. You see how quickly that changes. That's actually a really cool first example of this. So we're fishing with a telescopic rod, which means there is no reel. This would just be like holding, you know, a bamboo type telescopic rod situation out over the water, and just using the force of pulling the stick up, which this stick has a 4.8 meter length and a 4 kilo load capacity before it would snap. But also relevant, we have a line that's 3.1 kilos load capacity before the line would snap, and this is great because what this means is our line would break before our rod. It's a lot cheaper to replace line than it is a rod, especially as you get into slightly nicer material or equipment. So we're going to cast this the first time. I like that the first thing you do in the tutorial is you don't even have to cast. Your line is already in the water. But now we're casting by holding down the left mouse button. I still wish that one day this game could be available on consoles, but I don't know that that's realistic, if that's ever going to happen. But so now we've caught two different fish, which is kind of another cool way when you have a very I guess controlled environment for the tutorial. You can kind of make it do exactly what you want the experience to be like. So here we go. Hold down B. It's going to have a switch to maggots, it looks like, and now we cast again. So what do we think we'll catch? We caught a crucian, we caught a roach. Now we're throwing out, what are we using now? A maggot on a size 14 hook. Probably one of the two fish we've already caught, unless they somehow spawn a gibble for you or something. I don't remember what this fish typically is. So my hope for this account, and trying to be helpful for new players, is that at least to some degree, we'll just be a jack of all trades. I do think a lot of people come to this game, not everyone. Oh, it's a nice roach. Wow. A lot of people come to this game, whether initially or eventually, they get the bug for carp fishing. And I love carp fishing in this game, so we might at least partially try to start steering in that direction, but see, I never choose what rod I'm going to use by holding down U. Is that true? Or am I just not remembering that I do that? So you can drag them over to different numbers so that you have shortcuts, but it's wanting us to pick up the spinning rod. So if you're into, so far we've done float fishing. Now we're going to do a little spin fishing. This is a really nice lure. I don't think we get to keep this lure. I think this whole setup is gone when we actually start, right? Imagine starting with a Horizon 4000. 13.3. By the way they have this set up, what a terrible example. Oh my goodness. So let's talk about this for a second, just in case you're new to the game and you're trying to figure out how to set up your equipment. Generally, a good starting point is that the strongest part of your setup is going to be your rod. In this case, it's 12.1 load capacity. And then you want your reel to be slightly under that. And in this case, this is perfect. 12.1 and then 8.2. That is a perfect, I think, amount of disparity between the strength of the rod and the strength of the reel. Got about just under 4 kilos of difference there, but it's about 2/3 to 3/3 of a comparison. So in other words, around 60 to 75% of the reel strength compared to the rod strength. But then under that, you want your line to be about what the strength of your reel is. And ideally, you want your leader to be just under the line strength. So if a catfish somehow decided, you know, let's say a 40-pound catfish decided that it was interested in what we were fishing with, it's going to break our leader almost immediately. Unless we were like really on top of it, but let's don't get ahead of ourselves. Most likely it's going to break our leader, which is good because that means most of our line is still okay, but it's really good because we haven't lost our reel or our rod. Now, why in the tutorial is it setting us up with a 45 kilo load capacity steel leader? And the only answer to that is because for some reason it's wanting us to fish for pike in the tutorial. So this is your clue that maybe not the next fish, but one of these fish is likely to be a pike. There's no other reason, especially in freshwater, that you would use this steel leader. And it is so awkward that it is so much stronger of a leader than the line. So in this case, the line would break. But look how much stronger the line is than the reel. I think you're probably okay line to rod. I mean, it's still risky because it's technically higher. But I think you really stand a chance of doing major damage or even breaking your reel if you're not careful, if you have it set up like this, in my opinion. Okay, cast to the mark area. And we can hold this down to, we'll do a 97% cast. And now they just want us to, this is a spinner bait, so they're just going to have us do a very steady reel in. And there's our bite. I hit control right click just out of habit there to try to set the hook. Not necessary though. We reel it in, We don't have a net, so we have to actually use the right mouse to flip our rod back and pull this perch into our hands. One thing I am excited about this leveling series, well, there's lots of things. I've been taking a break from RF4, so it's always fun to play when I haven't played in a while. I also have a new piece of really expensive saltwater sea fishing equipment, so I can sort of, on my main account, have a laptop next to me. I'm not doing it right now, but at some points I can kind of be deep sea fishing on my main account without really disrupting what I'm doing here very much. But the other thing that I was just thinking of before I completely sidetracked myself is that there was a recent patch that I didn't make a video about. I didn't really even notice. But one of the things it did is, like, there's 3 or 4 low-level fish that it introduced new models. 2 or 3, I don't know. But anyway, we haven't seen any of them yet, but I'll try to remember to let you know when we see them. There are some new models that I've never seen before, which is kind of cool. All right, so that's a perch. And then now we're going to cast one more time, and I think this is the time we catch the pike. I'm going to hold it down all the way to 127%. And now, once again, because we're using that spinner bait, we're reeling it in at 16 speed, which is a nice speed. All right, so now we can do our friction brake up just a little bit. We'll go up to 28. And we've set this hook. We let the pike pull on us initially, but now that he's kind of spent himself a little bit, we've got enough strength to just pull this guy in at this point. Just kind of going to lead him right in. He's wanting to swim to our right, so I'm just letting him do that, but he's getting closer as he goes. And now we'll just flip this back into us. That's a weird sound, but we just caught a 7 to 8 pound pike, 3.5 kilo. Congratulations, you have finished the tutorial. Okay, so one thing that's fun here is that coming out of the tutorial these days, you actually get to choose which map you want to go to. And it doesn't matter what you choose here. This doesn't change like your starting equipment or whatever. I tend to enjoy fishing in Mosquito Lake more than Elk Lake, even though I live in North America. I do, at this point, because of this game and how long I've played it, prefer a lot of the more Eurocentric types of fishing. So if I had to guess, I'd say we'll end up spending more time in Mosquito compared to Elk. But there's still a lot that I haven't explored, so I do want to spend some time in Elk, and it's also, if you're going to be a jack of all trades, one of the things early on, if you want to spin fish, or float, but especially spin, Elk Lake is great for that. So I want to make sure that I'm right on this. I'm actually going to select Elk Lake. Not because I want to start off fishing there necessarily, but I want to look at our inventory and I'm having an internal debate. I've done this one time before since they came out with Elk Lake, created an account just to fish on Elk Lake some. I'm pretty sure it doesn't change what you start with. Now I'm like, well, if I select Elk Lake, am I going to remember what it would have started us with if I selected Mosquito? I'm going to have to rely on you in the chat. If y'all are watching this and you've done this more recently than I have, or you remember better, let me know, does it actually change what you start with? That sounds like a weird concept, but the precedent for that is that it does change what you get as reward. So your first 10 levels of leveling in this game, you'll get a reward for each level. And the one that matters the most is when you hit level 11. If you are spin fishing when you hit it, you get a more valuable reward than if you're bottom fishing or float fishing. It's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal. None of this is that expensive of equipment. It does help a little bit, though. All right, meet you at the water's edge, tight lines. All right, so it just drops us here. Now I'm really second guessing myself. Because look what it just put in our hand. One of these new lures that was made for Elk Lake and the spin fishing rod. Now we definitely would have started with this anyway. I just don't know about the lure. So somebody's going to have to help us out. They want us to hit F1 and look at all the controls, by the way. Somebody's going to have to help us out and let me know, would it have mattered Would it have mattered if I had gone to mosquito? And if so, what would have been different? This is pretty much all we start with no matter what. So let's look at what we start with. We have a float rod, pretty much the same one we've been using. We have a much weaker spinning setup than what we've been using. I mean, this is very weak. This is the bottom of the barrel. We have some very cheap hooks that you want to upgrade when you can, because this will affect bigger fish, nicer fish are more likely to come off of those. We have a nice variety of lures, so this makes me think that it doesn't matter where you start. I think they're just going to give you these two lures no matter if you start mosquito or elk. Because these are the types of lures you'd want to use at winding, another low-level place that you can do spin fishing. We have a few baits, just one maggot. Why do we have one maggot? That is so bizarre. In the former tutorial that we had, it actually, part of passing the tutorial was purchasing 30 maggots from the store, just to show you how purchasing works. We have a float here. We might actually have two, because I bet we have one already on here. Yeah, so we have two floats. And then that's pretty much the only thing that matters. We have a map for each of the starter lakes. Though Winding Rivulet is interesting, because Winding is also a starter. It's a river instead of a lake, but even though it's a level 0, in other words, you can go there from the very beginning. I guess you have to buy that map at Winding if you want that. A regular landing net 2 meter. We want to upgrade this to a 3 meter net. It will, trust me, it will be worth the 20 silver or whatever it is, because it certainly will impact when you get into a little bit heavier fish. You want to have that extra meter of reach. Okay, so this is what we start with. And it's nice to see some familiar names in chat. That's always fun. So let's look at one thing that we can check as let's just start off doing what I said we would do, which is to talk about some of the things that might be worth buying early, things you want to spend your silver on as you first begin fishing. And then we will do a little bit of fishing here in this first episode. So let's look at the rods first. In Russian Fishing 4, you can fish with three rods. You can have 3 rods out at a time. So this sort of leans into a more Eurocentric style of fishing, where even if you're float fishing, it's worth having more than 1 rod out. Particularly if you are bottom fishing, which is my favorite, then you always want to have all 3 rods out if possible. So yeah, I'm just kind of looking around, seeing some of what's going on at the different water bodies recently, so I know where we want to fish. But let's talk about, so I think, you remember, we have two setups right now: a spinning rod and a float rod. So what do you want to be thinking about buying early? In terms of rods, some of that is dependent on what type of fishing do you want to try to like lean into early. I think that it's, the decision is probably between a second float rod, so that you don't have to be as dependent on that bamboo stick that it starts us with. Actually, I'm not even sure that it starts us with that anymore. It doesn't, which is good. Those things are not fun to use. So you probably are wanting to go with either a telestick, float rod, second one of those, or the other thing that I kind of like doing is right from the beginning, getting a cheap feeder rod. Eventually I actually want to have 3 of these. But you have 50 silver, so you could just squeeze out a bottom rod. So then you're only float fishing with 1. And anytime you are float fishing, you could have your bottom rod out as well. And then if you're going to do more spin fishing, sometimes it's okay to have bottom rod out while you're spin fishing as well, also. So to me, that's like a good consideration of what you might want to do. I don't know that there's any other consideration unless you're just wanting to so focus on spin fishing that you don't even want to worry about the other types. And so you might immediately start saving up for like an arrow or something, a little bit nicer spinning rod. Then you also have to worry about the reels. Kind of excited. I don't think I've played with the new Lacertes yet, the NGs. These just came out not that long ago. So excited. Those might be some of our early reels. The other thing to remember, let's say you were going to go with this telestick, costs between 19 and 31 silver. We have the 25 model right now, which is 4.8 meters long, and that's the main difference here. And I would say that 4.8 is pretty nice. I don't think I would go shortest. I'd probably go this one. But it's always worth thinking about the kits. So that costs 25. Let's just see what the starter float fishing comes with. So for basically just over twice as much silver. Now you have to be level 3 to use this, but you'll be level 3 pretty quick. But you get a much nicer, not much nicer, a little bit nicer float rod. So I kind of like that. I mean, I think my early thought here is I want to get a starter feeder rod and get this setup going, and then maybe we get a second float rod, because I'm sure we'll end up doing, you know, trying to catch some float fish, whether it's float fishing either here at Elk or at Winding especially. It's not as fun to me doing it at Mosquito because of the crucian gibbles, just the slow bite rate of roach and stuff, but for a long time that's what you did, or a lot of people did. So that's pretty much it. I think the other thing I would say is, as soon as you can, you want to start getting some small hooks. Now these particular hooks you can't use till level 8 anyway, but they're out of stock here. But that's something you want to keep an eye on, is when do you find the smallest size hook you can get. Even the 20 is out of stock, but you could get an 18. So we'll check Mosquito and Winding, but having small hooks and then having big hooks, even early on, can be worthwhile because you want to be able to target things. Okay, so let's go ahead and purchase the feeder setup. So we have one feeder going. I'm gonna get the cheapest one right now, at least. The longer meter when you're bottom fishing, I don't know if I said the right thing, float or bottom. When you're bottom fishing, the longer one allows you to cast a little further and maybe have a little bit more control of the fish. Not much silver difference, but I'm still going to get the really cheap one on this first one, because every silver counts right now for us to have a chance at actually setting this up correctly. So I'm going to get this of the Spark 2 reels. Let me make sure there's nothing else we consider here. Yeah, we can't go Libra. Spark 2, we're getting a 3,000 just to have a little bit more spool. And then I guess the other thing we want is a bite alarm. And we're 0.2 silver away. So we're getting close. We could technically use it. Let's go ahead and let's put that here. We'll put our spinning in 3. Do we have spare line? We don't. So we still need to buy a couple things to be able to afford setting up our bottom rod. Okay, so there's some early thoughts on what we're saving for, what we're thinking about using. Okay, yeah, I'm just kind of looking around at different reports. By the way, I guess I should mention, if you go to rf4.fish, is that right? If I go to rf4.fish, does that take me to... Let me just make sure I'm not lying to you. rf4.fish, yeah. RF4.fish is a good resource to have in mind because it has links to a lot of other resources. Somebody in our community whose name is Blunty or goes by Blunty uses this, has created this for us. And it's going to link you to a lot of other really helpful resources, including places that will give you reports from other people who are fishing in this game about what they're catching where. I'll try to talk through other resources as we go. It's a really important thing. If your inclination is to think like, I'd rather not look up spots, that's fine. You can, obviously play however you want to play, whatever makes the most sense. But where are we headed to? We're headed to camp. You can think of it like if you were going, say you were going to a lake that you had never fished at before, or maybe it's just been a while. It wouldn't be that uncommon to go into the bait shop or somewhere in that community and just chat with someone like, what have you been seeing? Any tips? Or and that might not dictate exactly what you do every time, but it could be helpful in getting you started, So, for example, I saw someone talking about 106.97. Now, we don't have anything near what they have in terms of trying to do exactly what they were doing, but I am kind of curious about just sampling over here a little bit to see if we catch anything. Now, another spot at Elk Lake is right off the dock, where kind of close to where we were when we spawned in. But I saw this and thought, you know what? Let's just take a look. 106.97 is where we are, and using this, let's see if it gives us. If you're ever trying to figure out something about a lure or bait that you're using, it's always worth at least checking the description both of the thing in your inventory as well as in the store. Sometimes it gives us little hints about the best ways to use it. But we know that spinnerbaits usually do well, just like the spinnerbait we used in the tutorial, to either kind of with a stop and go motion or with just straight retrieval. I'm going to keep it at 16 and I'm just going to try straight retrieval. One thing I don't know is if we're going to get, there's weeds right in front of us. Sometimes weeds you can get snagged. So if that starts to happen, we're going to want to move or kind of reset. But you kind of never know till you fish in a spot if those particular reeds are going to be a problem. So going at this speed, we are definitely just kind of bumping it across the bottom, which I think is okay. We did not catch a single thing. Let's try one more time. If we don't start seeing some activity, maybe I'll do a little stop and go this time. We'll definitely move spots. If we had our bottom, so what I actually am seeing people report is that using worms, different kind of worms in this spot, they're catching some nice crappie and stuff like that. And that's the thing about this Elk Lake, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but this is one of the newer water bodies. And I'm going to hold down B and switch. Right before we move, let's just throw in the red and black one. Elk Lake is really good for spinning. It's okay for float as well, but especially spinning. And, it's like a Midwestern, just big pond or small lake that you might find, in the U.S. So kind of the fish species you might expect simulating that type of environment. But a lot of spin fishing. All right, let's go back to the white. And before we go back to spawn, let's maybe cast one time over here. We cannot cast real far, so going out on this little dock here might help us experience a little bit more places where the fish could be more catchable. We'll see. It's been a long time, so I don't remember. I just don't remember some of the details, and I haven't spent a lot of time at elk. It may be that this starting and stopping isn't as good as just a straight retrieval, but I'm not sure. Trying to mix in both a little bit. All right, let's go back to the spawn, and we'll just do a couple of things. We'll just kind of throw in our float setup and our spinner and just see if, I just wanted to at least see a couple of fish here if we can before moving on to mosquito and starting to see some of the more European style fish species. So we're running back to base. Of course, we could have fast traveled by traveling to mosquito, which is free, and then traveling back to elk, which would be free. But I don't want to break your immersion, so I'm going to hoof it back. Can't say that it's always the case, but it's often the case that just fishing right off this dock here at elk can be a pretty good spot. So let's put our float depth. By using plus and minus, we can change this. Let's try at 80 centimeters. 16 is the smallest we have, and we're going to use worms. Let's just cast this out here. We'll just kind of keep an eye on that. Oh, you see how the float is not up and down? By the way, I'm hitting, because of the way I have the shortcuts set up, I'm not sure what the default is. I think it still works, but I'm hitting 0 on, or is it 0? I think it's 0 for me to set the rod down, but you can always hit F1 and look at the shortcuts to do things. Yeah, it looks like 0 by default does work. So let's bring this back to 50 and see if that's at a depth where it will in fact have a better presentation. There we go. And then we're also going to cast this. Might slow this down just a little bit to 12 and just focus on a straight retrieval so that I can watch the float pretty closely in case we need to set this down and get the other one. Check our friction brake with the mouse wheel. Make sure we don't have our friction brake too high. All right, I see that float is happening. And I might have waited too long. Nope, we still caught it. That was very nice. Oh, and I think a red ear sunfish. I don't know if it'll still be there, but thought we might have had a fish on this. Maybe it just kind of sunk to the bottom and, oh, no, there's a fish. There's 2 fish in a row. A red ear, and let's see what we've got here. So you hit spacebar. Oh, a bluegill. All right. And I'm going to keep all the fish because you never know in the cafe, and I haven't talked about the cafe yet, but cafe is a way you can turn in your fish, sometimes for a higher profit than just straight selling them to the fish market. And especially at these lower level lakes, some of the more common fish, you can actually find cafe orders for fish that are smaller than what we call marker size. Generally speaking, in this game, neither one of these have a green mark up here, so neither one of them are going to be worth anything. By the way, you see how we keep getting fish on the drop like this? We lost one. But it is worthwhile if there's a cafe order, catching these small bluegills. So we'll keep trying it. So yeah, we keep getting these fish on the drops, which maybe we should just work in more pauses then. every time I set the rod down and the lure drops to the bottom, that's when we've been seeing the bites happen. Oh. Alright, I'm going to try not to cast this quite as far out. And that way we can see it a little bit more. We'll see if we still get bites this close. I just hit Z to zoom in. I'm trying to name the things that I'm doing since this is the first episode here. Alright, so you see the fish down there nibbling. Yeah, we should be able to catch this one. That's going to be a shad, right? A gizzard shad. Still not a marker. I still haven't been able to show you. I think a fish might have been on our line there. Yeah, we had a fish get away. So that was on the spinning setup. In chat it showed up, fish got away. Ooh. A warmouth. Alright, we're certainly seeing a lot of different species here. Just catching on very basic lure and a very basic bait. Just basic, you know, regular worms. So there's another bluegill. Still 0 marker fish, which is why we are still level 1. If any of these had been markers, we'd be level 2 already. But because they are undersized for these fish species, we're not getting very much XP for them. But that's okay. It still levels up our both our spin and our float fishing. Every time we're catching a fish, we're having a chance of leveling those up. And again, we lost a fish, but that's okay. Sometimes you lose them. There's a white crappie. We are getting such good variety right here. Let that hit the bottom, then we keep reeling it. Another gizzard. Well, we know there's fish here. Maybe we should increase the retrieval speed a little more. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be a little different presentation in the water. I'm going to try to just do straight retrieval this time unless the float interrupts us. Alright, so we did get a bite that time, just doing straight retrieval. Looks like a bluegill, right? Oh no, a little smallmouth bass. And we actually hit a level on that just because it's a smallmouth bass. And even the non-marker gave us a little bit more XP. People in chat are being very nice, congratulating the level up, even though they don't know who it is. A good sign about our chat community. Although with a name like the Leveling Angler, they will probably know that it is someone's alt. Another warmouth. And we had another fish got away. That is interesting, isn't it? Every time we put this thing down, something hits it. Alright. Nice little fish. Trying to get both here. See if it works out. Another warmouth. And this looks like this might be our first marker. Oh, maybe not. I can't tell. But it is. It's our first marker. A 106 gram warmouth. So out of all the fish we've caught, just one of them have been a marker. That's interesting. We're still almost level 2.5. Hopefully you noticed that gift we got for hitting level 2, which in this case was a lure. Again, we were doing it by spin fishing, so that's what kind of dictates what the prize is going to be. Oh, that's a nice bluegill. Wow, that's a big bluegill. And we get another dragonfly. Oh, I messed that bite up, didn't I? Okay, let's do this one more time, and then we'll go check the cafe. One thing that is definitely the case is we've hardly made any silver. Only 2 of these fish have been markers, so oh, that's a nice gizzard, though. That is a nice gizzard. F turns on the flashlight. Whatever it was, it popped right off. It wasn't even a fish got away. Ooh, okay. Look at that. Look at the size of that fish. What is this going to be? That's a crappie. It's a big one, too. We just hit level 4 on that crappie. Another dragonfly. I kind of like getting all these lures. Pretty fun. Oh, it popped off again. But that wasn't an FGA. So there's a difference in sometimes when a fish first hits and gets on, it'll just slide right off. And then like that one. And then other times, because you don't set the hook quick enough or like start reeling or whatever, it actually, you'll get what we call an FGA where it'll say in chat, fish got away. I think with these, with starter equipment and cheap hooks and all of that, a certain amount of slippage and stuff is just par for the course. Once the fish is on like this, you'll see that fish symbol, bottom left-hand side of the tension bar. And once you see that, you want to get your rod pointed more up in the air instead of down. Increase that tension so that you're less likely to lose it. That's another white crappie. Another nice little white crappie. Things will definitely slow down here as it's getting to be evening. It's almost 8 p.m. I think what I'm going to do, based on how long this opening, session has gone, is I am going to, in the next episode, sort of move to Mosquito probably first, and then we'll go from there. But I think for this first episode, we'll just focus on what we've done here at Colorado 001. Because this will be a good breaking point. I'll try to release these episodes. If I get, multiple filmed in the same day, I'll try to release them daily. Or at least like every other day to kind of get through a week. A lot of times when I'm doing these, I have to do a lot of the recording over the weekend, but sometimes I'll get an episode, done during so we'll see how it goes. But hopefully while I'm doing this series, I'll be able to get out an episode every day or every other day. And then I don't think I ever finished my thought, but one of the reasons why I like doing these episodes, leveling series at this time of the year, is because not just people having time off work or school and possibly finding this game or this community for the first time, but also because we're about just over a month out from Christmas, and Christmas comes with some challenges and opportunities to get particular gear that's available during the Christmas New Year's fair and as rewards from the challenges. And so it's a good time, if you're just finding this game, to explore the game and the different types of fishing. And hopefully this guide and our community can be helpful for that. But then you have something to look forward to over the actual holiday season that will get you some fun rewards and allow you to enjoy the game even more. So this is the cafe, and and this will happen a lot, and I'm just going to have to be okay with it. But we have some of the cafe orders here, but we're 1 or 2 fish short on everything. On pretty much everything. Poormouth, gizzard, bluegill, white crawdad. That is amazing. That is actually amazing. So if you look, we've got 14 silver worth of fish in our net. But if we finished these orders, we don't have a chance. I mean, we don't have any of this one, but 11, 22, 31. This would be 39 if we could just finish these orders. Which, if I just fished for a little bit longer, we could. But they're not going to really be available overnight. But to be fair, it just doesn't make sense not to try. So maybe change of plans in the next episode. We'll start here. And then we'll go from there. We might as well try to complete some cafe orders. We need the silver. Right now, you don't care too much about what level you are, other than the fact that it is fun to get the rewards, and there's some gear that even early on is kind of locked behind levels. And so it matters, it feels like it matters, but the thing that you are going to constantly be keeping an eye on in terms of your resources is how much silver you have. And cafe orders, if you do it right, can give you at least twice as much as you'd get from selling it just straight. So it makes a lot of sense to go that way. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you have questions, comments. Even if you're an old timer like I am, if you have ideas on maybe helpful things to go over or say or focus on as we're trying to just go through the early experiences of being a leveling angler in RF4. I'll see you next time.